Meeting 9th of October 2019.
Please rise for a moment of personal reflection and remain standing for the singing of our national anthem that will be introduced by Councillor Gower. You remain standing if you're able to, and we'll ask Councillor Gower to introduce a very famous individual who's going to sing our national anthem. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Today's anthem singer will be a familiar face and a very familiar voice to many of you. In 1974, Lyndon Sluage began his policing career with the Ontario Provincial Police in Sault Ste. Marie. Hockey has always been a part of his life, and in 1992, he moved with his family to the nation's capital to become the official anthem singer of the Ottawa Senators, where he was a mainstay for 24 great seasons. He retired from the OPP in 2012 after a successful 38-year policing career, and he continues to sing at many civic events in our community. It is my pleasure today to welcome Lyndon Sluage. Et maintenant, joignez-vous à Lyndon Sluage.
Now, please join Lyndon Sluage for the interpretation of our national anthem. Thank you.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patron love in all of us command, car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton soin est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Wow, what an amazing voice. Thank you, Lyndon, very much. We miss you at the Canadian Tire Centre, but thank you, Councillor Gower, for bringing our guest here to sing our national anthem. Thank you very much again, Lyndon and Glenn. The City Builder Award is presented today to Stopgap Ottawa in recognition of their efforts to make Ottawa more accessible. I'd ask members Chris Binkowski, Christina Johnson, and Kenzie McCurdy to come forward on behalf of Stopgap Canada right here on the circle. J'invite les membres de l'organisation.
Ask the members of the organisation to come up to the podium for the prize.
Kenny, who is the councillor where the Stopgap team works at City Centre. Welcome, bienvenue. Thank you all for coming. And here's your councillor. Welcome. I recognize members of the Stopgap Ottawa team who are here today, and I want to extend a warm welcome to your family and friends and community members who are also joining us. This award recognizes individuals who have demonstrated an extraordinary commitment to making our city a better place through volunteerism or exemplary action. Started in 2015, Stopgap Ottawa is a branch of the Stopgap Foundation based in Toronto that builds accessible ramps for businesses. Members here today, Chris, Christina, and Kenzie, and others, were frustrated by the lack of accessibility to many local businesses and knew the perfect solution. Stopgap Ottawa solves one-step barriers to access for people using wheelchairs or other mobility devices by building colorful wooden ramps to help make businesses more accessible. In fact, I bought one of your ramps, a nice bright red one, for my campaign office on Bank Street, and it worked beautifully. Through collaboration with community partners, including the Wellington West BIA, Makerspace North, and the Ottawa Tool Library, they've had 3 community ramp builds, the first being at Somerset Square. The Stopgap Foundation started in Toronto and became a registered charity in 2013. Since then, it's expanded to Ottawa, Kingston, Montreal, Stratford, and even New York City. Stopgap Ottawa has helped dozens of Ottawa businesses become accessible to people using wheelchairs, and they are very focused on continuing their important work. They receive regular requests for ramps from local businesses, and they're committed to creating a city where every person can access every space. I'm pleased to announce that an important Stopgap Ottawa initiative is taking place on Wednesday, October 23rd, to raise awareness about barriers to accessibility. A number of city councillors are being challenged to spend an entire day avoiding anywhere that someone using a wheelchair cannot go, and to highlight their insight on social media. This is the hashtag StopGapOttawa24 Accessibility Challenge. My sincere thanks to Stopgap Ottawa for raising awareness and helping to make Ottawa more accessible. I'd like to thank the many volunteers, community partners, donors, and supporters who help make Stopgap Community Ramp Build projects possible.
I'd like to use this opportunity to thank the opportunity for its many contributions to the community.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the organization for your many contributions to our community. On behalf of Councillor McKenney and all of members of City Council, it's my pleasure to present the three of you with the Mayor's City Builder Award for your great work to making Ottawa even more accessible. Congratulations, félicitations. We'll just go out in front here. We'll get a little picture. Come right this way. Come on up here.
Thank you. We would like to thank you, Mayor Watson, and City Councillors for honoring Stopgap Ottawa with the Mayor's City Builder Award. We are incredibly appreciative, not to mention surprised at this celebration of our little grassroots organization. We certainly cannot accept this award without acknowledging that would not have been possible had it not been for the many people who helped us along the way, including two of our partners, Makerspace North, who provides us with space for our community ramp builds, and Ottawa Tool Library, who lend us tools and experts who know how to use them. One of whom, Al Webb, he's a Stopgap honorary member, is here today sharing in this recognition. We have met some of you in person, and some have showed up at our builds, and we're grateful for that. Some of you have even accepted our Stopgap Ottawa 24-hour accessibility challenge, happening October 23rd. If you haven't, there's still time. We'd like to thank you for giving accessibility a platform, and we'd like to remind you of how you, as city influencers, are instrumental in the journey towards universal access for all. Stopgap Ottawa should not exist. We address the basest of accessibility barriers, the one-step barrier. And it is so simply resolved by a wooden ramp that any tool-savvy person can make. There is no reason for any one-step barrier in Ottawa, and that's where you come in. We need your help to reach out to businesses and BIAs in your areas. We have found that canvassing has not always been successful, but you have influence to convince shops, restaurants, and services to get on board, to create laws and bylaws that promote and ensure accessibility. So we look forward to continuing to work together to improve accessibility in Ottawa, showing that inclusion really does mean everyone. Thank you.
Well, thank you again to our friends from Stopgap. And Councillor Eglai pointed out a really great story in The Citizen today. Ottawa-raised Ilwad Elman is on the Nobel Peace Prize shortlist. I'll just read you one paragraph. The 29-year-old Somali Canadian has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize for her work with the Elman Peace and Human Rights Center in Somalia, a non-government agency founded by her mother, Fartoon Elman. So congratulations. That's quite an honor even to be nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize for a resident from our city. Roll call, please, Madam Deputy Clerk.
Councillor Luloff, Councillor Dudas. Here. Councillor Harder. Here. Councillor Suds. Here. Councillor El Shantiri.
Present.
Councillor Gower.
Here.
Councillor Kavanagh. Here. Councillor Cirelli. Councillor Eglai.
Here.
Councillor Deans. Councillor Tierney.
Present.
Councillor Fleury.
Ici.
Councillor King.
Here.
Councillor McKenney.
Present.
Councillor Leeper.
Ici.
Councillor Brockington.
Here.
Councillor Menard.
Present.
Councillor Cloutier.
Yeah.
Councillor Blais.
Here.
Councillor Derouse.
Here.
Councillor Moffat.
Here.
Councillor Meehan.
Here.
Councillor Hubley.
Here.
Mayor Watson.
Ici.
Le quorum t'attient, Monsieur le maire.
Merci.
We have quorum.
Sur le process verbal pour le 5 septembre.
Alors, adoption of minutes, September 25th of September.
Déclaration de conflit d'intérêt. None. Communications as presented. Regrets, Councillor Deans. See motion number 20/1 of September 25th, 2019. Rick Cirelli and Matt Luloff advised they would be absent from the City Council meeting of October 9th. Mr. Clerk, at the last council meeting, you recommended that council table consideration of Councillor Cirelli's request for authorization to be away from council. I understand that that was because his doctor had indicated that he would be away up until today's meeting. Also, we asked you to liaise with the councillor in the interim and to update council. Following up on that, has your office had any contact with Councillor Cirelli since the last meeting?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have, and has my office. I can advise that yesterday, Councillor Cirelli provided an updated written medical documentation to my office that includes his physician's recommendation of a continued leave on medical grounds until November 11th, 2019, inclusive. As such, Councillor Cirelli has also submitted written regrets for all council meetings during the period from October 10, 2019 to November 11, 2019, inclusive, and he has also reiterated his request that council approve his leave in accordance with the tabled resolution. Mr. Mayor, I would note that there are, in fact, 2 regular council meetings in November, being the 6th, one of the ones with a change date, and November 27th, just for information. With that in mind, Mr. Mayor, I would recommend to council that they deal with this tabled resolution at the next council meeting on October 23rd. I believe that that timeline would give Councillor Cirelli 2 weeks' notice to provide members of council or myself any additional information he may want to convey on this matter. And it would also, no matter what council decides on October 23rd, that would still leave Councillor Cirelli with in excess of 1 month to do whatever he needs to do according to the law. So that would be my update, Mr. Mayor.
So, Mr. Clerk, you're recommending that we deal with the request at the next council meeting. Would we do that by giving notice today?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so before we do that, I'd ask the city solicitor whether approving this request is something that City Council has to do. In other words, does the city have to accommodate the councillor, or does it have the discretion to say yes or no to his request?
Mr. Mayor, the answer to that is no. Council is not obligated to approve this request. The duty to accommodate that you refer to is one that arises under the Ontario Human Rights Code. That statute is not engaged in this instance. That applies only in the context of employment, and as we know, councillors are not employees of the municipality, nor is council providing a service in this instance that might otherwise engage the code. So given that, it's my view that the Ontario Human Rights Code and that duty to accommodate does not apply to council's consideration of the request, and council is free to approve or reject it at council's discretion.
Okay, so I'm therefore going to recommend that council deal with the request at our next council meeting and give notice to that effect today. Mr. Clerk, I trust that you'll continue to liaise with Councillor Cirelli.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
So the motion is moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Cloutier. Whereas on September 24th, Councillor Rick Cirelli provided notice to the Mayor and the City Clerk, including medical documentation of his inability to attend a committee and council for an indeterminate period of time, and at least until October 9th inclusive due to medical issues. Whereas at its meeting of September 25th, 2019, City Council considered a motion 20/5 with respect to Councillor Cirelli's request for an authorized leave of absence, table the resolution to authorize a leave of absence for Councillor Rick Cirelli and direct City Clerk to liaise with Councillor Rick Cirelli and to provide an update to City Council. And whereas on October 8th, 2019, Councillor Rick Cirelli provided updated written medical documentation of the clerk's office, including his physician's recommendation for continued leave on medical grounds until November 11th, 2019 inclusive. And whereas in accordance with subsection 66 bracket 5 of the procedure bylaw, a motion that has been tabled at a previous meeting of council may not be lifted off the table unless notice is given under section 59 of the procedure bylaw. Therefore, be it resolved, excuse me, that Council at its meeting of October 23rd, 2019, lift from the table the following resolution for consideration. Be it resolved that City Council authorize a leave of absence for Councillor Rick Cirelli. So this is moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Cloutier. It is a notice of motion. Okay, we don't need to require a carry because it's a notice motion. We'll have the full debate in 2 weeks. Okay, thank you. Motion to introduce reports. Motion portant de présentation de rapport. Conseiller Tierney, appuyé par Conseiller Gower.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That the Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee Report 7, Finance and Economic Development Committee Report 8, Planning Committee Report 13, Transportation Committee Report 5, and the report from the City Clerk entitled Oral Summary of Written Public Submissions for items subject to the Planning Act, Exploration Requirements at City Council meeting September 25th, 2019 be received and considered.
On the motion by Councillor Tierney, second by Councillor Gower, carried.
Could I? Oh.
Sorry, Councillor Meehan, did you have a question on the motion?
Is it possible to lift an item just to ask a question?
On the bulk consent?
Yeah?
Yeah, we'll get to that in just a moment.
Thanks.
Thank you. Committee reports. Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee Report number 7, rapport numéro 7 du Comité de l'Agriculture et des Affaires Rurales. Draft City of Ottawa comment on the proposed changes to the provincial policy statement. Carried. Item 2, Planning Services Funding Review and Staff Increase. Councillor Elshantiri and Harder have a motion, an amending motion, so we'll table the motion to see if there's any debate on this. Otherwise, we'll carry on with the consent agenda. So, Councillor Elshantiri, would you like to introduce your motion, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Harder. This motion also been prepared with the staff's blessing. Whereas the report, Planning Service Funding Review and Staff Increase proposed amendment to the planning applications fees, and whereas Document 1 detailed the current and proposed City of Ottawa user fee, and whereas rural area are defined in Schedule A Rural Policy Plan of Official Plan, and whereas the Rural Council had expressed a concern that the cost to develop land in a surrounding rural community such as Lanark or Prescott Russell is already lower, and whereas the Rural Area Council fears that such a rapid increase in application fees will disadvantage rural economic development in the City of Ottawa, whereas the zoning fee can be isolated from the rest of the fees, such as the cost of living, the payment of LMS, and the amount required for the FTEs as detailed in the report will remain the same. Therefore, be it resolved that Council approve the incremental increase in the zoning fee for rural applications as defined in Schedule A of the official plan for 2020 and increase to the full amount in 2022. And there be a further resolve that Council approve the replacement of Document 1 with the attached revised version.
Okay, it appears that our monitors are not working, so I know Councillor Meehan wants to speak to this, but since there are a number of people, so we'll table the motion and we'll come back to it as we go through the rest of the agenda.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item 3, Official Plan Amendment and Zoning Bylaw Amendment, Osgood Care Centre. Carried. Planning Committee Report number 13, item 4, numero 4, Zoning Bylaw Amendment, 1950 Scott, 312 and 314 Clifton. This was an issue that was held because of a notification issue. A duo. That's right. I think it's the same result.
Yeah.
On the motion, carried. Dissent by 3 members of council, Menard and McKenney and Leeper. Okay, thank you. Item number 5, zoning provisions for high-rise buildings, an amendment to correct an anomaly in the GM general mixed-use zoning concerning high-rise buildings. Dispensation de zonage pour les immeubles de grande hauteur. Carried.
Just thanking staff for this, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry?
Can I just thank staff?
Yep.
Just want to thank Mr. Willis and Mr. Curry for their work with the industry and certainly reflecting our goals as a city, and Mr. Wise as well.
Do you have a cold? You have a cold? Me too. Okay, that's carried. Item 6, zoning bylaw amendment 412 Sparks Street, modification règlement de zonage 412 rue Sparks. Carried. Transportation Committee report number 5, rapport numéro 5 du comité des transports. Item 7, municipal parking management strategy refresh and governance review. Carried. Hold. Come back to that. Bulk consent agenda. Councillor Meehan, you had something on the bulk consent agenda you'd like removed?
Actually, I don't, Your Worship. It was actually the item 2, the planning services funding review and staff increase. It's not. I don't want to speak to what Councillor El-Shantiri, but I do have a question for staff on the other part of that. Thank you.
Thank you. So on bulk consent, does anyone wish to remove anything from the bulk consent agenda? No. On the bulk consent agenda as presented? Carried. Thank you. So we'll go back to the first item that was held. That is planning services funding review and staff increase, and Councillor Meehan has the floor, and if people would like to just wave to get my attention because the monitor's not working at this point. So Councillor Fleury. No. Councillor Meehan. It's working. Okay, Councillor Meehan.
It's working now? Yeah. Okay, thank you. This has to do with part 2 of the planning services funding review and staff increase. It has to do with the staff increase, and I want to thank where's Leanne? Hi, Leanne. I want to thank Leanne for all the work she's done on this. And but Leanne, based on our private conversations, I know that there's no guarantees that if we increase the staff for the department, there's no guarantees that this is going to really affect the deadlines that are imposed. So I'm just wondering that after. And because the fees are going to be picked up eventually by the homeowners in the development, is there a way that maybe in a year's time we can take a look back and see what the staff increase means to those deadlines, just to gauge, you know, I know that we're seeing a backlog of applications who are coming in, but can we measure what degree that funding increase is going to, and the staffing increase will mean to the backlog and to the deadlines, to see what impact we're having? Can we ask maybe in a year's time to have a look back and see?
Mr. Mayor, absolutely. We will definitely be tracking our progress on these changes. So excellent question, and we will do that.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. That's all.
Great, thank you. Councillor Fleury, s'il vous plaît.
Councillor Fleury.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
The report, Table 3, provides an interesting graph, but it doesn't really, it says there's a complex algorithm in terms of factor, but could I ask Mr. Willis or whomever from his department to just provide context? Because Ottawa is lower than Toronto, okay, but we're much lower than Hamilton and some other cities. What does that mean? Why is there such a discrepancy?
So, Mr. Mayor, actually, if councillors are interested, there was a very interesting report released just last week. There was an interesting report released just last week by BUILD, which is the Builders Association of the Toronto area, done by Altus, that compared the total cost of government fees imposed by municipalities in the planning approvals process. And you will read that report and you will see Ottawa's numbers have been quite consistent over time. Notwithstanding the fact our fees and development charges have gone up, we still are roughly the same level of charge we've been for a very long time, and we are in the bottom third, I'd say, of the province in these fees. The reason why we have been conservative in terms of applying these fees is we are surrounded by a bunch of municipalities that probably charge a small fraction of what we charge, so there is a bit of a local competitive thing. So we don't have the same situation in the Toronto area where everybody else around us is charging the same thing.
Okay, could you share that article with us?
Yeah, we will get that report and we'll circulate it.
Thank you.
Merci. Councillor Brockington, please, on this item.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good morning, everyone. To staff, is for what I understand, what's being proposed by Councillor Elshantiri is that the fee increase will be graduated over a couple years, that we will actually have the actual fee by 2022. What's the financial impact of foregone DC revenue over those 3 years?
Mr. Mayor, that would be approximately, it's just slightly under $30,000 difference over that 2-year period. So in the grand scheme of things, that's a very small amount, and we're still going to be able to move forward with the initiatives that we've identified in this report.
Okay, and do you believe, though, that this would be an incentive to attract new development, or at least convince people who are thinking about development to stay within the Ottawa boundary? Is this something that you think is positive?
Mr. Mayor, I think it's something that may contribute to that, but I think in the end of the day, I don't believe development application fees are a deterrent to development, but I'm certain people will take advantage of that amount, that cost.
Okay, appreciate your input. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have Councillor Elshantiri's motion, seconded by Councillor Harder. Carried. On the main report is amended. Carried. Adopté. Merci. The next item that was held is Transportation Committee Report number 5, rapport numéro 5 du Comité des Transports. Item 7, Municipal Parking Management Strategy Refresh and Governance Review. Councillor Leeper held the item. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor, and I was pleased to support this at committee. I've had a number of discussions with the BIAs in our neighborhood, and I don't know if we have time to sort this out immediately, but they are looking for a greater share of the parking revenues that are generated locally to make local improvements within the scope of what is allowed in terms of how parking revenues can be used. If we pass the strategy as it is today, do we forestall the ability to rethink how those grants are being distributed, or is there delegated authority for staff to make changes in the coming months and years?
Mr. Mayor, the Municipal Parking Management Strategy Refresh does contemplate an increase to the BIA grant, doubling the amount to $10,000. It also, as part of that process, we will be looking at broadening that scope and looking for additional opportunities. We anticipate being able to get that in place at the end of this year, and working directly with the BIAs to identify what opportunities may exist. And this is something that I expect we will grow in the subsequent years, and we're continuing to work with the BIAs, keeping in mind that we are constrained, and any spending by the BIAs will need to be consistent with the Municipal Parking Management Strategy and have a connection to parking.
And I should say congratulations, or how pleased I am that the city is taking a much more expansive view of what parking-related expenses are. I think we're moving in absolutely the right direction on that front. What would be the next opportunity, though, to rejig the formula by which BIAs get their grant, possibly according to what percentage of parking revenues are generated within their BIA as a whole?
Mr. Mayor, our process is to reach out to the BIAs about this time every year, and we will endeavor to do that and work with them to identify opportunities. In terms of moving to a next step to identify opportunities to tie the grant amount to the size of the BIA or the amount of parking, that is something that I envision we can look at possibly even starting next year. It would be too soon to do it this year.
Okay, but in terms of the mechanism, though, is that something that would require a vote of council, or is that something that staff would have the delegated authority to decide if we move ahead with the strategy as it's put on the table today?
Mr. Mayor, this is something that we did take away from Transportation Committee, and we will be looking at this. If there are changes that require council approval, that is something that I envision we will bring forward as part of our annual report or another report to seek approval for that if required.
Okay, this came up late in the process, I recognize. It's something that I want to keep an eye on. There is both a larger public interest as well as a very local interest in how those revenues are used, and I'll continue working with our BIAs in Kitchissippi to see how that formula might be rejigged in future. But first, congratulations as well on a lot of work. This has been a 3-year discussion, I think, and congratulations on getting to this point. Mayor, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Leeper. Councillor Kavanaugh, please.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to join others in thanking staff for their hard work on this report. It was very much in need of updating, and we really appreciate the effort of finding ways to use this money within the rules that we have, and to make it more flexible in terms of and creative, really. But I'd like to give a notice of motion about the future, and I'm moving this, seconded by Councillor King. Whereas Sections 390 and 391 within Parts 7 of the Municipal Act 2001 provide statutory framework for Council to impose fees and charges to recover the city's costs related to services or activities provided for its use of property and property under its control, and whereas there must be reasonable connection between the fees charged and the cost of the services provided, whereas parking fees are imposed to recover costs related to the services and objectives identified within the municipal parking management strategy, and whereas the City of Ottawa does not currently have the statutory authority under the Municipal Act 2001 to use parking revenues for projects related to sustainable transportation, including sidewalk construction and cycling infrastructure. Therefore, be it resolved that the Mayor, on behalf of the City of Ottawa, petition the Province of Ontario to make the necessary changes to the Municipal Act to permit the City of Ottawa and other Ontario municipalities the ability to use municipal parking revenues for projects related to the sustainable transportation, including sidewalk construction and cycling infrastructure.
Councillor, if I can just interrupt, thank you for introducing that. That would be under notices of motion, so we'll come back to that at the end of the meeting, but you've introduced it, and do you have any questions on the strategy itself?
In terms of, I just want to clarify in terms of for the park and cycling, if that will be included as well, if that will be expanded, because this is an opportunity to get cycling into increased by creating areas where people can park and then cycle to work. We already have one pilot project that will be coming to Andrew Hayden Park, and I want to know if that will be expanded under this.
Mr. Mayor, a key initiative that we have going forward from the strategy refresh is the development of a bike parking strategy, and in developing the scope for that strategy, we will consider the bike and park concept and including that.
Thank you again for the work on this. I know it was a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanaugh. Councillor Fleury, s'il vous plaît.
Mr. Mayor, we spoke at length at committee on this exact issue. I brought a motion at committee. I would recommend that the member bring this as a direction to the mayor to write to the province, not as a notice of motion. And I would recommend as a friendly amendment to remove where we direct the funding. The concept is we want to generate the revenue and be able to spend it where council's priorities are. I think we collectively agree to that. We don't need to have the debate as to where it should need. We need to find the tool, the mechanism to unlock that. So I would recommend, if the mover is comfortable, that we amend the motion to ask that the mayor ask the province to gain the authority to be able to spend the money, and then that be based on council's priorities.
Yeah, just on that, as I mentioned, this is a notice of motion, so we'll have that debate in 2 weeks.
I guess I'm recommending that it not be, that we actually bring it to, as a direction to you, Mr. Mayor, as part of this report.
Well, we'd have to get the concurrence of City Council, but my understanding is Councillor Kavanaugh wanted this, have some time to bring it forward in 2 weeks. If you want us to waive the rules to allow us to have a debate now, we can, or we can deal with it at the next council meeting. And it can be amended between now and then, if you want to discuss that with Councillor Kavanaugh. Okay, so I think maybe Councillor Fleury will have a discussion with you, and there may be some compromise that can be reached.
It's up to council if they're willing to look at this today,
Yeah, my only reluctance is it sometimes gets us in trouble when we put motions on the fly and we haven't had staff opportunity. The good thing about a notice of motion, it gives staff 2 weeks to help answer any questions of a technical nature.
Okay, I'm willing to talk further on the points that Councillor Fleury has raised, but I feel that we still should target this funding and not have it in a general account.
Yeah, so I think that's where you'll have to sort of maybe use the next 2 weeks to get together and find if there's some happy common ground. Okay, so on the item, carried. Next is motion to adopt reports. Motion portant adoption de rapport. Councillor Tierney, please, seconded by Councillor Gower.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That the Agricultural and Rural Affairs Committee Report 7, Finance and Economic Development Committee Report 8, Planning Committee Report 13, Transportation Committee Report 5, the report from the City Clerk entitled The Summary of Oral and Written Public Submissions for the item subject to the Planning Act explanation requirements at the City Council meeting of September 25th, 2019 be received and adopted as amended.
Carried. Adopté. Motions of which notice has been given previously. Motion by myself, seconded by Councillor Leeper. Whereas in 1940, during the Nazi occupation of the Netherlands in the Second World War, the Dutch royal family was evacuated and offered a safe refuge in Ottawa. And whereas in 1943, Crown Princess Juliana gave birth to her third daughter, Princess Marguerite, at the Ottawa Civic Hospital, making her the only royal personage ever born in Canada. And whereas the Government of Canada temporarily declared a maternity suite at the Ottawa Civic Hospital to be extraterritorial jurisdiction so the princess would inherit her Dutch citizenship from her mother and remain in line for succession. And whereas in celebration of the princess's birth, the Government of Canada flew the Dutch flag over the Parliament's Peace Tower in Ottawa, the only time in history a foreign flag has been accorded this honor. And whereas the Crown Princess Juliana and her daughters stayed in Ottawa until the liberation of the Netherlands in 1945, becoming part of the community, and whereas a deep and lifelong friendship was forged through the prominent role that Canada played in ending the Dutch oppression under the Nazis, and whereas we remember this relationship was forged in the courage and sacrifice of more than 7,600 soldiers, sailors, and airmen who died fighting for the liberation of the Netherlands. And whereas every year since the war, the Netherlands has sent thousands of tulip bulbs to Ottawa, an appreciation of Canada's sacrifice in providing safe harbor to the Dutch royal family. And whereas the Canadian Tulip Festival was established in 1953 to celebrate the historic gift of tulips from the Dutch royal family, and whereas the festival commemorates the crucial role of the Canadian Armed Forces played in the liberation of the Netherlands and Europe, as well as the birth of Princess Marguerite in Ottawa, whereas 2020 marks the 75th anniversary of the liberation of the Netherlands, and whereas the City of Ottawa hopes to build on our 75 years of friendship with the people of the Netherlands by commemorating Ottawa's special connection with the Dutch royal family, and whereas both the Ottawa Hospital and the Canadian Tulip Festival are in strong support of a commemoration in honor of Princess Marguerite's legacy and as a symbol of her lifelong friendship with the people of the Netherlands, whereas Fairmont Park, located 350 meters from the Ottawa Civic Hospital campus, is a fitting tribute to Princess Marguerite and the 75th anniversary of the liberation of the Netherlands. Therefore, be it resolved that Fairmont Park, located at 265 Fairmont Avenue, be renamed the Princess Marguerite Park, and be it further resolved an appropriate plaque be installed in the park displaying the name Princess Marguerite Park and including a brief history of the commemoration. This has a personal meaning for me because my father was one of the liberators that helped liberate the Netherlands when he was a soldier serving overseas in World War II. I had the honor, as I mentioned to Council, the opportunity to meet with Princess Marguerite and suggest that this was a proposal that I was going to bring forward. And she was very humbled and very honored by the possibility. And I want to thank Councillor Leeper for seconding the motion. You know, this is really quite a special tie we have, not just obviously with the royal family staying here, but the continuation of the love between the two countries. You see that certainly at Remembrance Day when veterans go to the Netherlands and they're treated as heroes as they are and as they were. And sadly, you know, within the next, I suspect, several years, there will be no World War II veterans left because they've all passed away. Many of them are in their late 90s as we speak. So I think this connects the bond of history with our two countries, and I'd ask for Council's support. Anyone else? Carried. Thank you. Motions requiring suspension of the rules of procedure. First one is Councillor Leeper, seconded by Councillor Harder, with respect to an interim control bylaw for Westboro. On suspension, carried. Councillor Leeper, if you'd like to introduce the motion, please.
Thank you, Mayor. A year ago, the Council supported an interim control bylaw to freeze triplexes of a certain build form in a very specific part of Westboro while we study whether or not that is an appropriate built form. I want to thank the Planning Department and David Wise in particular that they are having an excellent conversation with residents. We are getting at the root of how we can do infill better. I think that the findings of that study are going to help inform us to create better infill right across the across the city. But the study is ongoing, and so I'm asking for Council's support today to continue the interim control bylaw. Whereas the expiry date of the Westboro interim control bylaw is October 10th, and whereas it is appropriate to consider in a timely manner whether the ICB should be extended, therefore be it resolved that the rules of consider be suspended. Rules of procedure be suspended to permit the consideration of the following motion. Whereas pursuant to Section 38 of the Planning Act, the Council of the Corporation is entitled to extend interim control. And whereas on October 10th, 2018, Council directed the emplacement of an interim control bylaw on lands bounded by Golden Avenue to the west, Byron Avenue to the north, Tweedsmuir Avenue to the east, and Dovercourt Avenue to the south. And the Planning Department continues to study options to amend the land use regulations and policies associated with infill and intensification in this area. Therefore, the Council of the City of Ottawa enacts as follows: that a bylaw be added to the agenda of the Council meeting of October 9, 2019, which bylaw provides that item 2 of the said bylaw 2018-362 be amended by replacing the text, "This bylaw is repealed on October 10th, 2019," with the text, "This bylaw is repealed on October 10th, 2020." Thank you, Mayor.
Great, thank you. And that's seconded by the Chair of Planning, Councillor Harder. Any other questions? On the motion, carried. Next item requires suspension of the rules, moved by Councillor Menard, seconded by Councillor McKenzie, free transit on Federal Election Day. Yeas and nays on suspension.
Councillor Sudds? No. Councillor Kavanagh? Yes. Councillor Hubley?
No.
Councillor Eglai?
No.
Councillor Dudas?
No.
Councillor Tierney?
No.
Councillor Deans? Councillor Brockington?
Yes.
Councillor Gower?
No.
Councillor Fleury?
Oui.
Councillor Cloutier?
No.
Councillor Moffat?
Yes.
Councillor Blais?
No.
Councillor King?
Yes.
Councillor Meehan?
Yes.
Councillor El Shantiri?
No.
Councillor Luloff? Councillor Menard?
Yes.
Councillor Leeper?
Yes.
Councillor Harder?
No.
Councillor Cirelli? Councillor DeRuse?
No.
Councillor McKenney? Yeah, yes. Mayor Watson.
No.
9 yeas, 12 nays.
Okay. Thank you. Council will also be asked to waive the rules of procedure to consider 2 in-camera matters pertaining to pending appointments of the city's senior leadership team. Councillor Derouz, if you'd please introduce the motion. Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Dudas. Apologize.
It's okay, all us deputy mayors look the same. No. Be it resolved that the rules of procedure be suspended, receive and consider the appointment of the Chief Financial Officer, City Treasurer, and request for exemption pursuant to the bilingualism policy for pending appointments to, wait, is this? Yeah, this is in camera. Should excuse. For pending appointments to the extended leadership team, and be it further resolved that Council resolve in camera pursuant to Procedure Bylaw 2019-8, subsections 13(1)(b), personal matters about an identifiable individual, including staff, and 13(1)(d), labor relations or employee negotiations, to receive a verbal update with respect to the appointment of a Chief Financial Officer, City Treasurer, and exemption requests pursuant to the bilingualism policy.
Okay, so on suspension? Carried. On the motion? Carried. We'll now take a 5-minute recess before moving in camera. I'd ask that the room be cleared and that staff who do not need to be present, please leave the room as well. And please remember to bring all your belongings with you.